My name is Bernadine Trussell. I'm 76 years old, and last month, my only son buried his father-in-law like he was royalty. Full-page obituary. Hundreds of mourners. An honor guard from the local fire department. Myron Whitaker was praised as a pillar of the community, a loving grandfather and a generous soul. And me. I wasn't even invited. Not that I expected one. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. I knew what the silence meant. That cold, calculated silence that had become our new language. You see, the last words my son Everet spoke to me were 5 years ago. He stood at the edge of my porch with his wife, Corinne, clinging to his arm like a vine choking a tree. He didn't yell. Didn't cry. He simply said, "Mom, we need peace. And you bring too much drama. Corinne doesn't feel comfortable with how emotional you get. It's too much." And just like that he chose her. Not me. Not the woman who raised him on food stamps and second-hand shoes. Not the woman who worked 2 jobs so he could wear a cap and gown at graduation. Not the woman who stitched his costumes for school plays by hand while other kids wore store-bought Spider-Man suits. I wasn't a saint. I know that. But I was a mother. And he threw me away like an old recipe card he didn't want cluttering the kitchen. I stood there on that porch, the wind tugging at my cardigan, my mouth parted in disbelief. Not even anger at first. Just disbelief. "You're cutting me out," I whispered. Just like that. Everet wouldn't meet my eyes. "It's what's best," he said. "For the kids. For us." Corinne didn't speak. But the smirk tugging at her lips spoke enough. They left. Drove off in their shiny SUV with a bumper sticker that said, "Family first." That night I made a pot of stew. Set 3 places out of habit. Then I sat alone at the table and realized he wasn't coming back. The next 5 years unraveled slow. Like a sweater you keep wearing even as the threads pull loose. I sent birthday cards to my grandkids. No reply. I dropped off Christmas gifts at the edge of their driveway. They sat in the rain until the garbage trucks picked them up. I watched Everett's life on social media through friends. He was thriving. Photos of lake vacations. Fancy brunches. Corinne in coordinated outfits with the kids. Perfect smiles. Perfect captions. Not a single mention of me. First I cried. Then I stopped. Then I started building something new. But I'll tell you about that later. Because today, as I stood in the market aisle picking out sweet potatoes, I heard a voice behind me I hadn't heard in years. "Mom!" Turned. And there he was. Everet. Alone. His sunken suit jacket wrinkled. Wedding band gone. He looked like a man who had just crawled out of a storm. I said nothing at first. Just looked at him the way you look at a ghost you're not sure is real. He stepped closer. "Can we talk?" he asked. I reached into my cart, grabbed my bag of sweet potatoes and pushed it down the aisle. "You're 5 years too late," I said without turning around. Behind me I heard him sigh. She left me. Took the kids. Moved across the country. Still I didn't stop walking. He followed. Corinne said I was never enough. That I ruined everything trying to control her. And now I have nobody. No one. Stop. Turned slowly. And I looked him dead in the eyes. "I'm not nobody," I said. "But I'm no longer yours to run to when the storm comes. You threw me out of the boat, Everet. I learned how to swim without you." He looked gutted. Like a boy who finally realized the candy was poisoned. But I wasn't finished. Because what he didn't know, what no one knew, was that I'd spent the last 5 years building a life so full, so rich, so sacred, that his return wasn't a blessing. It was a warning. And I had a choice to make. Let him back in. Or finally, fully, lock the door he slammed shut on me years ago. But this time, had the key. If you felt that sting in your heart, if you've ever been dismissed, overlooked or called too much, then you understand what Bernadine is facing. Like this video, drop your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. There was a time I believed Corinne was the best thing that ever happened to my son. She was graceful, polished, the kind of woman who sent handwritten thank you cards for baby shower gifts. When Everet brought her home for the first time, she wore pearls, brought me lemon poppy seed muffins in a gift box, and called me Miss Trussell. She sat straight-backed at my kitchen table, sipping sweet tea and smiling like she'd been raised in a Southern etiquette handbook. But something about her smile didn't touch her eyes. It took me months, maybe even years, to admit what I felt the moment I met her. She didn't like me. No, it was more than that. She studied me. She catalogued everything. My mismatched furniture, my hands with crooked knuckles from years of waitressing, my cluttered bookshelf, my freezer full of homemade casseroles labeled with duct tape. She didn't see a woman who had survived. She saw a woman she needed to erase. Still, I kept trying. I babysat when she needed quiet. I ironed Everett's shirts before job interviews. I even let her redecorate my living room with throw pillows I hated just to show her I was willing. And every time I made space for her, she shrunk mine. Early. Masterfully. She started with the calendar. One Thanksgiving, I found out they were going to her mother's 2 days before the holiday. I'd already bought the turkey. It's just easier, Everet said over the phone. Less running around. Then came the birthdays. Suddenly, I was being asked to drop gifts off instead of staying for cake. Corinne's got a new routine with the kids, Everet explained. She's working on consistency. By the time my granddaughter Lila turned 8, I wasn't even told the party was happening. I found out through a neighbor's Facebook post. A unicorn-themed gathering in their backyard. Lila wore a glitter crown. Corinne wore that same practice smile. I sent a message to Everet that night. Was there a reason I wasn't invited? He didn't reply. Not for days. Then finally, Mom, Corinne's worried your presence would overwhelm the event. She says you make things too emotional. We just want peace. Too emotional. As if my heart was a ticking bomb and not a compass that had kept our family from drifting when Everett's daddy ran off. Still, I swallowed it. Bit my tongue so often it should have been scarred. But the final blow came one Sunday afternoon. I was dropping off some peach cobbler. Lila loved my cobbler. Used to eat it right from the pan with her little hands before Corinne started feeding her low-sugar yogurt and flaxseed smoothies. Corinne answered the door, one hand on her hip, the other holding a steaming mug of something fancy. "Oh," she said. "You didn't text." "I didn't know I had to," I replied, handing her the cobbler. She didn't take it. "Everett's napping," she said flatly. "And the kids are with friends. Maybe another time." I just stood there. She leaned closer. "I think it's time we all admit something, Bernadine," she said, her voice sugar-coated poison. "You're a lot. Everet doesn't say it because he loves you, but it's exhausting." And blinked. "I'm his mother." She smiled. "And I'm his wife." I felt the weight of the cobbler in my hands like a stone. Warm. Heavy. Useless. That night, Everet called. He didn't apologize. He didn't ask me how I was. He said, "I think we need to set boundaries. Corinne is uncomfortable and honestly I'm tired of being in the middle. Maybe we need some space." That was the day I realized I was being exiled. No argument, no betrayal of trust, just emotional inconvenience. And I let it happen, because part of me believed maybe I was too much. Maybe grief had made me clingy. Maybe my pride in our history was outdated, embarrassing. But then came the silence. And silence always has a voice if you listen long enough. The first Christmas alone, I drank cocoa and watched old home videos on my TV. I watched Everett's little face at age 6, missing his front teeth, singing Rudolph out of tune. I watched teenage Everet bring home a trophy, lifting it high while I cried in the background, blurry and forgotten. That night I made a decision. If they were cutting me out, I wouldn't spend my life standing at the edge of their lives, waiting to be let back in. I started volunteering. I joined a seniors art club and learned how to paint. I started hosting Sunday dinners for other folks who had no one. I planted a garden. I smiled again. And little by little, the ache turned into something else. New life. One where I wasn't too much. I was just Bernadine. Whole. Real. Loud. Loving. And then last week I saw his name on my phone. Everet. Calling me. 5 years of silence, broken. I didn't answer. But I knew he'd find me. And he did. Right there in the produce aisle. Looking like a man who finally realized the perfect life he built was hollow. But what he didn't know yet was this. While he cut me out, I built something better. A life he can't walk into like a guest. 'Cause this time, I'm the one who's already gone. After Everet left me standing in the market, I didn't cry. I didn't even pause. I simply finished my shopping, drove home, and unpacked the sweet potatoes with the same calm I used to fold his baby clothes. I was done giving tears to people who only showed up when their lives fell apart. That night, I sat on the back porch with a blanket across my knees and a mug of tea warm in my hands. I looked out at my garden. My pride, my sanctuary, my resurrection. It started with 3 tomato plants and an empty patch of dirt. Nothing special. Just something to do with my hands when the grief got loud. Now it was an oasis. Sunflowers stood tall along the fence line. Lavender waved in the breeze beside rosemary and mint. Raised beds were filled with heirloom squash, bell peppers, onions. A tiny white bench sat under the peach tree, carved with a quote I found on a napkin at a roadside diner. Bloom where they tried to bury you. Ahead. Every Saturday, neighborhood kids came to help me weed and plant. We called it Grandma Bee's Growing Gang. I taught them how to compost, how to pull carrots without snapping them, how to talk to plants like they had ears. And they talked back. In joy, in peace, in healing. One of the girls, Kylie, was 10 and had lost her mother to cancer the year before. She clung to me like a vine the first day she visited. Now she brings me drawings every week. I didn't just build a garden. I built a life where I mattered. Where I didn't have to ask for love or prove my worth. So when Everet called again the next day, I didn't pick up. He left a voicemail this time. Mom, please. Need you. Corinne's gone. She took everything. I miss the kids. I don't know who I am without them. Messed up. I know I did. I listened to it twice. Then I deleted it. Not out of cruelty, but out of self-respect. The next week, I hosted our monthly garden dinner, a potluck under the fairy lights in my backyard. 23 people showed up. Kids, couples, widows, old veterans, nurses, teachers. One man who used to sleep in his car and now helps me build raised beds for the elderly. They brought casseroles, cobblers, cornbread. Someone brought brisket that made everyone moan in happiness. I made peach tea and pulled a fresh pie out of the oven. At the end of the night, we all sat in a circle with dessert plates in our laps, and I shared a little story about Everet as a boy. How he once tried to build a birdhouse with popsicle sticks and ended up gluing his fingers together. We laughed. I laughed. Because I could finally tell stories about him without breaking. And that was when I knew. I was no longer waiting for him to come back. 2 days later I got a letter in the mail. From Everet. The envelope was thin, hand-addressed in that shaky handwriting of someone finally ready to say what should have been said years ago. Inside was a single page. Mom. See now. I let someone else decide who you were. I was afraid of the parts of me that came from you. Your passion, your fire, your refusal to be small. Corinne called it drama. Called it inconvenient. But I know better now. Sorry. I don't deserve anything from you. But I hope one day you'll let me sit in your garden and just listen. I folded the letter slowly, ran my fingers over the creases. Then I slid it into the drawer next to my stove, the one where I keep recipes I don't use anymore, old coupons, and photographs of people who once meant everything. He was sorry. But sorrow isn't a key. It's an admission. And I wasn't a locked door anymore. I was a whole house rebuilt without him. A week later he showed up. Again. This time at the edge of my yard, near the lavender bushes. He didn't come to the door. He just stood there, holding a small plant pot in his hands. A sapling fig tree. He set it down gently near the gate. And then he left. Didn't say a word. Just drove away. I stood there for a long time, staring at the fig tree. Teeny. Fragile. Trying to grow. Might survive. Or it might not. Either way, it wasn't my job to make it bloom. I already had a garden full of life. And a heart full of peace. If you're feeling what Bernadine is feeling, you know that healing sometimes isn't loud. It's silent, sacred, and strong. Tap the like button, share your story in the comments, and subscribe. It was a Thursday afternoon when Everet came again. This time he didn't just leave a tree and walk away. He knocked. I was in the kitchen kneading dough. Flour dusted across my apron, the scent of rosemary rising from the stovetop. I paused, looked out the window, and saw him standing there. His posture uncertain, like a man who'd wandered too long and wasn't sure if the map would still lead him home. I didn't rush to the door. Took my time. When I finally opened it, I didn't smile. I didn't scowl either. Just waited. Everet held a container in his hands. Something wrapped in foil. Peach cobbler, he said. Your recipe. And blinked. You stole my cobbler recipe. He half laughed, sheepish. It's the one thing I remembered by heart. I didn't say anything. Just let the silence hang between us. Then he looked past me into the house and said, You haven't changed the curtains. No need to, I replied. They still do their job. He nodded slowly. Can I come in? I stepped aside. Not to let him in, but to block the door more clearly. Why now, Everet? What do you want? He looked down, then met my eyes. I want to know you again. I want to fix what I broke. The words sounded sincere. But sincerity is cheap when it's bought at the price of absence. You want to fix it, I repeated. Like this is a squeaky hinge or a leaky faucet. I know I can't undo what I did, he said quickly. But I can start showing up. I've been seeing a counselor. I've been learning how much damage I caused. I miss you, Mom. I miss having you in my life. I believed that. But it didn't change the fact that he chose to erase me when it suited him. So I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest for 5 years. Do you even know what it cost me? He frowned. What do you mean? You told your children I was too dramatic. That I wasn't safe to be around. You didn't just step back, you disappeared. You let them grow up thinking I was broken. He looked like he'd been slapped. I didn't mean to. But you did, I said, holding up a hand. You did. And they believed you. Because children trust their parents. I stopped being grandma. I became the ghost no one talks about. I was a story that ended without a goodbye. A long silence stretched between us. Then he said, "What do I do? Tell me how to fix it. Please." And that's when I realized something important. He still didn't get it. He wanted to be told how to fix it, like there was a manual for rebuilding trust, like there was a list of steps he could follow to be welcomed back. But some things don't get fixed. They get lived through. I don't have instructions for you, I said softly. I only know what I need. And what I need is peace. Not pressure. Not guilt. Not rushed apologies. He looked down at the cobbler. I guess I thought, maybe you'd be glad to have me back. I have joy, I said. But it doesn't come from you anymore. Comes from a life I built after you left. A life that didn't include needing your permission to feel whole. He blinked hard like he was trying not to cry. Then he whispered, "Do you hate me?" "No," I said honestly. "I don't hate you. Love you. But loving you doesn't mean I have to open my gate to you again." He nodded slowly. Set the cobbler down on the porch. Then turned to leave. And I didn't stop him. That night, I brought the cobbler inside and warmed a slice. It wasn't half bad. A little too much cinnamon. Not enough butter. But I could taste the effort. The next morning, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a drawing from Lila. Sun. Garden. A stick figure labeled Grandma B. I held it in my hands and wept. Not from sadness. From something else. Oh, 'cause maybe, just maybe, the gate would open again someday. But on my terms. When I was ready. And not a moment before. If you've ever had to protect your peace, even from someone you love, then you know the strength it takes to close that gate. Click like, tell your story in the comments and make sure to subscribe. The next time Everet knocked, it was spring. The lavender had returned in full bloom. My daffodils were already leaning toward the sun, and the bees had begun their soft song again. But this time, he didn't come with a cobbler. He came with Lila. She stood beside him, tall for her 12 years, holding something behind her back. Her eyes weren't as unsure as his. She didn't look down or around. She looked straight at me. "Hi, Grandma B," she said. Froze. The last time I heard her say my name, she was 7 and sticky with strawberry jam, riding a tricycle in my driveway. Now she stood there, half girl, half young woman, with a notebook clutched behind her. Everet cleared his throat. She asked to come. I didn't make her. "I know," I said softly. Then Lila stepped forward slowly and held out her notebook. "I had to write a school essay about the bravest person I know," she said. "I asked Dad about you. I didn't remember much. Just that you made cobbler and used to sing during dishes. So I found one of your old videos online, the garden interview with the news station last year. I watched it 5 times. And blinked. You saw that?" She nodded. "You talked about how people can grow again even after being cut down. That made me think maybe you didn't leave me. Maybe you were just waiting for someone to come looking." She handed me the notebook. "I wrote about you." Opened it. The title at the top. "The Woman Who Grew a Garden Instead of Growing Bitter." My knees nearly gave out. I stepped aside. "Come in." "Not Everet." Just her. She walked into my house like she remembered it. Like it still held pieces of her too. She sat at the kitchen table, ran her fingers over the old wood grooves, and smiled at my pie cooling on the counter. You still use cinnamon, she said. Of course I do, I replied. But not too much. Everet overdoes it. We laughed. Real laughter. The kind that fills a room with something sacred. I made her tea. We talked for 2 hours. About school, books, the dog she'd gotten for Christmas. She asked about my garden, my new painting hobby, the kids I mentored in the neighborhood. She didn't ask why I left. She didn't need to. She knew enough now to understand what silence means when it's protecting your soul. Eventually Everet came to the door. I met him on the porch. He looked at me, hopeful. But I shook my head. She's staying for dinner, I said. You're not. He nodded. Didn't fight it. Didn't push. Just said, thank you for opening the door for her. I didn't, I said. She opened it for herself. And then I closed it. Gently. After dinner, Lila walked through my garden, tracing her fingers over petals and whispering the names of herbs like they were old friends. She asked if she could come back next weekend. Told her yes. Every weekend if she wanted. She hugged me tight before she left. Not like a child. Not like someone who needed something. But like someone who understood the cost of returning. After she left, I stood alone in the backyard under a sky peppered with stars. My peach tree swayed in the wind. The fig tree Everet had brought months ago was blooming now, slowly but surely, and I smiled, not because he came back, not because he said sorry, but because I finally saw the full picture. I hadn't healed so he could find me. I had healed so I could be free. And that freedom, it wasn't loud or triumphant. It was quiet, like fresh soil beneath bare feet. Like sun-warmed hands after a long winter. Like the sound of your granddaughter saying, I missed you, without needing to ask why you were gone. I didn't get revenge. Got something better. Life. A new chapter. A garden where love grows on my terms. And that, more than anything, is how I won. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever had to walk away from people who couldn't see your worth, hit that like button. Share your own healing journey in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Because stories like Bernadine's remind us that peace isn't something you find in others. Something you grow.